The sky above the refugee camp was dark and full of smoke. Old tents flapped in the wind, and the ground was dry and cracked. Humans and aliens both walked in silence, carrying bags, babies, and pain in their eyes, in the far corner of the camp. Next to a food line stood an alien woman. She was thin, her clothes were torn, and her skin looked pale and dry. Her eyes were tired, but still alert, searching, hoping. She didn't beg, didn't speak, didn't even step forward to ask for food. She just stood still, watching quietly from behind a tent pole. Across from her sat a human man, a single father named Eric. He looked strong but tired, wearing an old jacket and worn-out boots. Next to him sat his little daughter, Leah, around 6 years old. Her small hands held a warm plate of food, bread, soup, and some cooked beans. She smiled as she took small bites and laughed at something her father said. The alien woman's eyes locked onto that plate, not with jealousy, but with silent hunger. She took a small step forward, then stopped. Her hand touched her stomach gently, as if trying to stop the pain inside. Eric noticed a strange feeling. He felt like someone was watching. He looked up and saw her. Their eyes met for a second. The woman quickly turned away, pulled her robe tighter, and walked into the shadows. Eric paused, surprised. There was something in her eyes, not just hunger, but fear. Why didn't she come closer? Why didn't she ask for food? Others begged or stole, but she did neither. She just watched and disappeared. Like a ghost, he stood up slowly, told Leah to stay there, and followed her path. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way she looked at his daughter's plate. Maybe it was something deeper, a feeling that she needed help, but couldn't ask. As he walked through the camp, he passed tired workers, broken shelters, and crying children. He saw the woman again. Behind an old medical tent, she was on her knees, pulling something small from under her long robe. Eric stopped and hid behind a pile of boxes, watching carefully. The woman unwrapped a bundle of cloth and revealed a small alien child. The child was weak, her skin pale blue, her eyes barely open. She looked sick, maybe starving. The woman whispered softly, "It's okay, little one. I'll find something for you." But her voice broke at the end, full of sadness and worry. Eric's eyes widened. This woman wasn't hungry for herself. She was starving, because she was saving all her food for her child. He stepped out from behind the boxes, slowly. The woman gasped and pulled the child close, fear in her eyes. "I'm not here to hurt you," Eric said softly. "Hands up." He took off his backpack, pulled out a wrapped piece of bread and a half-eaten fruit. He placed them on the ground and took a step back. The woman looked at the food, then at him, unsure. She reached out carefully, took the food, and held it to her child's lips. The little girl ate slowly, her eyes barely open, but a tiny smile appeared. Tears filled the woman's eyes. She looked at Eric and whispered, "Thank you." Eric didn't speak. He just nodded and said, "Come with me, I have more." She hesitated, then stood up with the child in her arms. For the first time in many days, she took a step toward hope, not knowing that this moment would change all of their lives forever. Eric moved carefully through the dusty paths of the refugee camp. The cold wind hit his face, but his mind was focused. He had just seen the alien woman stare at his daughter's food with quiet hunger. And when their eyes met, she disappeared into the shadows. Most people would forget it, but something about her eyes stayed in Eric's heart. They weren't just hungry, they were desperate and scared. He passed tents made of old cloth and broken metal. People whispered, fires crackled, and a few guards walked around with dull eyes. He kept walking, following his instinct. Then he saw her. She was kneeling behind a broken supply crate, her body hunched over, her robe covering something close to her chest. She looked around nervously, thinking no one could see her. But Eric was already there, hiding behind stacked boxes. He stayed quiet, watching from a distance. Then she opened her robe slowly. From inside, she pulled out a bundle of dark fabric, carefully folded. She whispered, "She baby. It's okay." and then he saw it. A small alien child, no older than 6, lay inside the cloth. Her tiny arms were thin, and her breathing was slow. Her skin was a soft bluish tone, but it looked dry and cracked from the cold. The child whimpered softly, her voice too weak to cry. Loud, the mother rocked her gently, brushing dust from her face. She took a broken bottle from her side and tilted it. Only one drop of liquid came out, barely enough to wet the child's lips. Eric's heart sank. This woman wasn't just hungry for herself. She was starving so her daughter could live. She had no food, no shelter, no help, and still, she tried to stay strong. The woman spoke softly to her child. "Just a little more time, I'll find something, I promise." Her voice cracked at the end, filled with guilt and fear. Eric couldn't stay silent anymore. He stepped forward, slowly. Not wanting to scare her, the woman quickly turned, wrapping her daughter back into the robe and stepping back. Her eyes widened in fear like a cornered animal. "It's okay," Eric said gently. He raised both hands to show he meant no harm. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the food he saved. Half a loaf of bread, a boiled potato, and an apple he didn't eat yet. He bent down and placed the food on the ground between them, then took 3 steps back. The woman looked at the food, then at him, unsure. Her hands trembled as she picked up the bread. She broke it into small pieces and placed them near the child's mouth. The little alien girl opened her eyes slowly. She chewed gently, a small smile forming as she tasted something real for the first time in days. Tears filled the mother's eyes. She looked at Eric, not with fear this time, but with gratitude. "Why?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Eric didn't speak right away. He just pointed to his chest and said, "I'm a father too." The woman looked at her daughter, then at him again. She nodded slowly, then hugged the child close. Eric stepped forward again. "There's more food. Come with me," he said. She hesitated, but when she saw her daughter's eyes light up at the sound of more food, she took a deep breath and followed. As they walked back to the food shelter, other eyes watched them, some with surprise, some with judgment, but Eric didn't care. He had seen what others ignored. A mother hiding her child under a robe, trying to protect her from a world that no longer cared, and now someone finally did. Eric led the alien woman and her sick child through the dusty path back to the food station. Many people stared as they passed. Some humans whispered among themselves. Others stepped back, showing silent anger or confusion. But Eric didn't stop. His face was calm, his step strong. The woman followed him slowly, her eyes down, holding her child close to her chest. She looked like she expected someone to shout, to block her way, but no one dared, because Eric wasn't just anyone. He was known, respected, even feared by some. A man who lost everything in war, but still had his heart. He reached his small table near the camp kitchen. His daughter Leah was still sitting there, swinging her legs. Her plate was nearly empty, but her smile was wide when she saw the alien child. In her mother's arms, her eyes lit up with curiosity, not fear. Eric pulled out an old chair and motioned for the alien woman to sit. She hesitated, looking around nervously, then gently lowered her daughter onto the seat and sat beside her. Eric took out more food from his pack: 2 pieces of bread, a tin of beans, and half a boiled egg. He placed it all on the table, evenly, dividing it into 3 small plates. "A table for 3, he said with a soft smile. The alien woman stared at the food, her lips trembling. She reached out slowly and fed her daughter first. The child ate in tiny bites, her eyes brightening with each taste. Leah leaned forward and offered the alien girl her juice box. The woman paused, unsure, but the little alien girl reached out and took it with weak fingers. She sipped once, then twice. Her blue lips turned up in the smallest smile. The mother's eyes filled with tears again. She looked at Eric and whispered, "I haven't seen her smile in days." Eric just nodded. "Children shouldn't have to suffer. Not human, not alien." He added, "Others in the camp began to notice. A human man sharing his food and table with an alien mother and child. Some people shook their heads. One guard whispered, "He's crazy." Another said, "He's going to get in trouble with command." The camp's food supervisor, a tall woman named Mara, approached the table. She crossed her arms and looked. "At Eric, you know the rules," she said sharply. "No food sharing outside your assigned group." Eric stood up slowly. "I didn't break the rule," he said. "She and her child are now part of my group." "She's not registered," Mara replied. "No ID, no food." "She's a mother," Eric said calmly. "A mother doesn't need an ID to feed her child." The camp fell silent, watching the moment unfold. Mara frowned, unsure how to answer. Finally she sighed. "You'll lose your extra rations this week." "I already gave them," Eric replied, sitting back down. The woman looked at him, shocked. "You'll go hungry for us?" She asked softly. Eric smiled and nodded. "I've gone hungry before. I'll survive." "But your child, she ate already," Eric said proudly, glancing at Leah. The little girl smiled, showing her missing front tooth. The alien woman looked down at her plate, then back at Eric. "You're different," she said. "Most humans walk past me like I don't exist." "I saw you," Eric replied. "That's all." "No," she whispered. "You didn't just see me, you stopped for me." The moment was quiet, full of warmth. A small fire had started in the middle of cold silence, a human and two children sharing food. And something more, trust. But not everyone was happy. In the far corner of the camp, a tall alien male stood watching, his arms crossed, his face angry. He recognized the woman and her child. He turned and walked toward the shadows, meddling human. He muttered, "You won't protect her for long." Back at the table, Eric handed the alien girl a small piece of chocolate. She took it like a treasure. Holding it carefully, her mother touched Eric's arm gently. "My name is Saya," she said. He nodded. "And your daughter?" "Nivra." Leah giggled and said, "She's my friend now." Saya smiled and whispered, "Maybe hope isn't gone after all." Eric looked up at the stars, not knowing that danger was already moving through the dark camp. Night fell over the refugee camp like a heavy blanket. The wind grew colder, and the lights around the tents flickered weakly. Most families gathered inside their shelters, trying to sleep, but Eric could not rest. He kept thinking about Saya and her daughter Nivra, about how fragile and weak the small child looked, about the fear in the mother's eyes when she first saw him, and about the shadowy figure he noticed earlier, the alien man who stared at them with burning anger. Eric sat outside his tent, sharpening a small pocket knife, not for violence, just habit, a habit formed from years of surviving war. He looked around the camp, watching the guards walk slowly by. Everything seemed calm. But he felt something coming, something wrong inside the tent. Leah slept peacefully, hugging her soft blanket. Saya and Nivra slept in the spare corner Eric had offered. He insisted they stay for the night. "It's safer with us," he said. Saha resisted at first, but after seeing the angry stares in the camp, she agreed silently. Meanwhile, at the edge of the camp, hidden behind supply crates, stood the tall alien male Juruk. His red eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He spoke to two other aliens from his faction. "She stole from us," Juruk growled. "She took from our storage before we escaped the colony." One of his men frowned. "It was only medicine." "It was mine," Juruk snapped. "That medicine belonged to my group, and now she hides with a human," he added with disgust. "What will you do?" the other asked. Juruk smiled a cold, cruel smile. "Tonight, I will take back what is mine, and teach that human a lesson." Back in Eric's tent, the quiet night suddenly shifted. Nivra began to cough. Soft at first, then stronger. Seha sat up instantly and held her daughter close, her eyes full of worry. Eric stepped inside at once. "She's burning again," Seha whispered, her voice shaky. Eric touched Nivra's forehead. She was hot. "Too hot. We need more medicine," Seha said, her eyes filling with fear. "We used the last bit yesterday," Eric nodded slowly. He knew where the camp stored extra medical supplies, but it was restricted, locked, guarded, and getting caught meant punishment. But he didn't even think twice. "I'll get more," Eric said firmly. Sehe looked at him with both hope and fear. "Why do you risk so much?" She whispered. "Because she's just a child," he answered. "And no child should suffer like this." Before Eric could step outside, the tent flap moved. A tall shadow appeared in the doorway. Jurek stepped in with slow, heavy steps, his eyes fixed on Saya, then on Nivra, then on Eric. Eric's grip tightened on his pocket knife. Leah woke up and sat up quickly, eyes wide. Sehe moved closer to her daughter, fear returning to her face. "What do you want?" Eric asked calmly. Jurek sneered. "She stole from us. She took our medicine." "My property. That medicine saved her child," Eric replied. Jurek stepped closer, towering over Eric. "And now you're protecting her?" Eric didn't move, didn't bend. He stood tall, his eyes unblinking. "Yes," he said simply. "Because someone had to." Jurek growled deeply. "You humans think you're heroes," he spat. "But you don't know what she is." Saya flinched, her eyes lowered, her hand squeezed Nivra tighter. "What is she?" Eric asked, but Jurek ignored the question. He reached for the sick child. Eric stepped in front of him instantly. "You touch them," he said quietly, "and you'll regret it." Jurek froze, surprised by the human's courage. Then he let out a dark laugh. "You think you can stop me?" Before he could move again, a bright camp light flashed. 2 guards approached, weapons raised. "What's happening here?" One shouted. Jurek stepped back quickly, masking his anger with a false calm. "Nothing," he growled. "Just a misunderstanding." But before leaving, he leaned toward Eric and whispered, "This isn't over, human. You can't protect them forever." Eric watched him disappear into the shadows. Sahaya trembled, holding Nivra close. Leah crawled beside them, placing her tiny hand on Nivra's arm. Eric knelt down and said softly, "He won't touch you again. I'll keep you both safe." But deep in his heart, he knew the danger was only beginning. Tomorrow, he would have to risk everything, even his place in the camp, to save the life of a child who wasn't even human. And that choice would change everything for all of them. The cold wind sliced through the camp like a knife, but inside Eric's tent, it was burning hot. Nivra lay on the ground, wrapped in 2 blankets. Her face pale, lips cracked, sweat pouring down her little forehead. Saya knelt beside her, wiping her face with trembling hands. "She's getting worse," she whispered, voice broken. Eric placed a hand on Nivra's chest. Her breathing was fast and shallow. He had seen this before on Earth, in war zones, in disaster camps. The signs were clear. She had a fever too strong for her small body. If she didn't get medicine tonight, she wouldn't survive till morning. "There's no time," Eric said, standing up. Saya looked at him, eyes wide with fear and hope. "But where?" she asked. "The medical hut," Eric answered. "The locked one. No one is allowed inside." She warned, "They'll exile you, maybe worse." Eric glanced at Leah, who was sitting quietly, holding Nivra's hand. Then he looked back at Saya. "I've faced worse," he said softly, "and I won't let a child die, not while I can still move." He put on his old dark jacket, tied a scarf around his face. He slipped a small light and a screwdriver into his pocket. He looked back one last time. Saya gave a silent nod, tears in her eyes. Then he stepped into the night. The camp was quiet. Most people were asleep or too tired to care. The guards were few, walking slow patrols. The medical wing stood at the far end of the camp, a metal container, half buried in the dirt, with a locked door and warning signs. Eric crouched near the shadows. He waited for the guard to pass, then moved quickly, silent as wind. He reached the door, checked the lock. It was old, but tough. He pulled out his screwdriver and worked the lock slowly. Sweat dripped from his forehead, not from heat, but tension. He heard footsteps, froze, then silence. After a few more turns, click, the lock opened. He slipped inside, closing The door softly behind him. It was cold inside, but shelves were lined with medicine, boxes and data pads. He turned on his small light and moved quickly, scanning the labels. He didn't know alien names, but he remembered the vial Saya had shown him, the shape, the color, the markings. His fingers moved over boxes, jars, and tubes. Then he saw it, a small silver box marked with the same blue triangle. He opened it. Inside were 3 vials of the same medicine. He grabbed one, placed it carefully in his jacket pocket, then grabbed 2 more for safety. Suddenly, clank. The door behind him opened. A bright flashlight hit his face. Hands up. A voice shouted. 2 guards rushed in, pointing stun rifles at him. Eric didn't move. "I'm not stealing," he said calmly. "I'm saving a child. You're trespassing on restricted medical property." One of the guards snapped. "We have rules." Eric looked straight at them. "She'd die if I don't take this back. She's an alien," one of them muttered. "She's a child." Eric replied, voice hard. "Is that not enough for you?" The guards looked at each other, unsure. Eric slowly pulled the vial out and held it up. "I'll take the punishment," he said, "but I'm leaving with this." One of the guards stepped back slightly. The other hesitated, then said, "You have 5 minutes." "We saw nothing." Eric's eyes widened, just for a second, then he nodded. "Thank you." He rushed out of the building, heart pounding. He ran through the sleeping camp, shadows chasing him. He didn't stop until he reached his tent. He burst. Inside, Saya jumped to her feet. "Did you get it?" she asked. Eric pulled out the vial. Her hands shook as she took it and prepared the small injector. She knelt beside Nivra and gently pushed the medicine into her arm. For a moment, nothing. Then Nivra's breathing slowed. Her lips moved slightly. She whispered, "Mama." Saya broke into tears and kissed her daughter's forehead. Eric sat down, finally breathing again. Leah hugged his arm tightly. "You saved her," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "She's safe for now," but he knew deep inside, the camp leaders would find out. Jurek would come back, and this fragile peace wouldn't last still for tonight. A sick alien child lived because one human broke the rules and chose to do what was right. Sun rose slowly over the refugee camp, but for Eric, the warmth it brought meant little. His body was tired and his eyes stung from no sleep, but he didn't care. Nivra was alive. The little alien girl had stopped shaking during the night. Her fever dropped, and her weak voice called out, "Mama." That one word made all the risk worth it. But peace didn't last. Before the morning meal was served, 2 guards came to Eric's tent. Their faces were cold. "Come with us," one of them said. Saya stepped forward in fear. Holding Nivra close, Eric gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's all right," he said. "Stay here." He turned to Leah and smiled. "Be brave, little soldier," then followed the guards through the camp. Eric was taken to the center of the camp. There, inside the old meeting hall, sat the camp council, 5 humans and 3 aliens, chosen to keep order. They looked serious, tired, and unsure. Mara, the strict food supervisor, stood near the front, arms crossed. "You broke into the medical wing," one council member said. "You took restricted medicine without permission. That is a direct violation of camp law," another added. Eric stood tall, not blinking. "I did," he said clearly, "and I'd do it again." Gasps filled the room. Some nodded, others frowned. "The medicine is for registered camp members only," Mara said. "Not for unlisted aliens." Eric's voice stayed calm. "She's a child," he said. "She was dying, and no one cared." A younger councilman leaned forward. "Why didn't you come to us first?" "Because there wasn't time," Eric answered. "And I've seen what happens when people wait." One older alien counselor, his skin a soft gray-blue, asked, "And what if every person took rules into their own hands?" Eric replied, "Then maybe every child would have a chance." The room went quiet. Then a familiar voice spoke. "I was there," came the voice of Jurek. The tall, angry alien stepped into the hall. He pointed at Eric. "He protects a thief." She stole medicine from my unit before we fled our colony. Saya stood up at the back of the room. I took 1 vial, she said, her voice shaking. My daughter was sick back then too, and no one from your unit helped. You had medicine stored away while children starved, Jurok growled. That wasn't your right. Eric stepped in. She took what you wouldn't give, and because of that, her child is alive today, Jurok shouted. They broke the law. They deserve exile. Suddenly, a small voice rose. No. All heads turned. It was Leah, Eric's daughter. She stood near the doorway, her tiny fists clenched. She didn't steal. She cried. She just wanted her baby to be okay. The council was stunned. Leah walked up, stood beside her father. She's our friend now, she said. She's kind. And she smiled at me. The older alien counselor smiled softly, then stood. We make rules to protect life, he said, but sometimes we forget what life really means. He looked at Jurok, then at Saya, then at Eric. This man broke the law, he said, but he did not break the spirit of it. He showed compassion, one by one. The council members nodded. Mara looked annoyed but said nothing. A final vote was called 6-2. Eric was not punished. Instead, he was offered a new role. We ask you to lead a new care unit, said the council head, for humans and aliens in need, to bring food, medicine, and hope where others have forgotten. Eric was stunned. Sehe covered her mouth in disbelief even. Jurok, though angry, said nothing and walked away. Eric looked at Leah, who smiled and held his hand. He then looked at Saya and Nivra. I'm not a leader, he said quietly. You're something better, the council elder said. You're human. That day the camp changed, not through a war, not through a fight, but because one man cared, because one child spoke the truth, and because rules were broken. For the right reason, days passed after the trial, but the story of what Eric had done spread quickly through the camp. Some called him foolish, others called him brave. But one thing was clear, he had changed something deep, something silent. The camp wasn't the same anymore. People began noticing things they ignored before. A human boy gave a blanket to an old alien man. 2 alien women helped carry water for a human mother with twins, and near the food tent, a small table appeared with a handwritten sign, for anyone hungry. Eric had been given a small unit to manage nothing fancy, just a few supply boxes, and a metal hut, but it was enough. He called it the Compassion Post. There, Saya and little Nivra helped every day. Saya organized clothes, sorted medicines, cleaned wounds, and Nivra, though still weak, sat with the children. Human or alien, it didn't matter. She told quiet stories, drew pictures, and made everyone smile. Leah and Nivra became close like sisters. They played together, ate together, and even argued sometimes, just like real siblings do. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the rocky hills, Eric sat outside the Compassion Post, sharpening a wooden stick into a toy for the girls. Saha sat beside him, sewing patches onto an old shirt. For a moment, they just enjoyed the quiet. No alarms, no hunger cries, no shadows, just peace. You could have left, Saya said softly. You didn't have to help me. Or her, Eric smiled. Maybe, he replied. But the day I saw you watching my daughter's plate, I knew something was wrong. Most people stare with hunger, but you stared with pain. Saya lowered her eyes. I thought no one saw me, she whispered. Eric looked at her, serious now. I did, he said. And I saw a mother willing to starve for her child. That kind of love doesn't need words. It screams louder than anything. Tears filled Saya's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. Eric placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You're not invisible anymore, he said. Not here. Not with us. From inside the post, laughter rang out. Leah and Nivra were dancing to a broken radio's music. Their giggles filled the air. Life had returned. Not just to the children, but to the camp itself. Later that night, As stars blinked in the black sky, the council elder who once defended Eric visited the post. He stood quietly, watching the lights, the warmth, the people coming and going. "You've built something real here," he told Eric. "Not with bricks, but with heart." Eric nodded. "I just did what anyone should." "Then maybe more should follow," the elder said with a smile. "Perhaps the galaxy doesn't need more rules, it needs more people like you." The elder then turned to Saya. "You've been offered refugee status," he said. "Full rights, safety, and, if you accept it, a chance to choose a future." Saya looked shocked. "I've never had that before," she said quietly. "Then maybe it's time," the elder replied. He bowed gently and walked away under the stars. Eric looked at her. "You can leave if you want," he said. "Take Nivra somewhere peaceful." Saya looked at Laya, then at Nivra, then back at Eric. "Where would I go?" she asked. "My home is here now," Eric smiled, and for the first time. They both knew what that meant. A new family had formed, not by blood, but by choice. A single human father, a strong alien mother, two little girls who saw no species, only friendship, and a camp that once felt cold now had warmth, because kindness lit a fire no wind could ever put out.